While in Israel, the war cabinet has been meeting to consider its response. A spokesman for the Iranian government insisted that Tehran had shown restraint and that the strikes were a limited act of self-defense. Our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson has the latest. Israel is deciding how to respond to this. Hundreds of drones and missiles fired over the weekend from Iran. Damage on the ground was limited. Damage to regional stability, much more severe. At an airbase hit by missiles in the Negev desert today, Israel's chief of staff promised a response. Iran will face the consequences for its actions. We will choose our response accordingly. The IDF remains ready to counter any threat from Iran and its terror proxies. Israel says only a handful of missiles made it through air defenses, but this direct confrontation with Iran, the first on Israeli soil, has thrown the Middle East off balance. What's shaken Israel in these attacks isn't the damage caused, but how they happened, with drones and missiles sent straight from Iran. And what these strikes left broken isn't so much infrastructure, it's Iran's fear of launching a direct attack. Iran's attack came with careful signaling. Its government warned Israel's allies of the strikes and said they were punishment for an assassination in Syria, and that Iran now considered the matter closed. Our advice to all the supporters of a Zionist regime is to appreciate Iran's responsible and measured action and dissuade the Zionist regime from committing more wicked acts, which would bring incalculable consequences. But Israel has said it will exact a price from Iran. Its prime minister, under pressure from allies to de-escalate the situation, has been discussing with his war cabinet exactly what that price should be. One former diplomat with experience of Iran says military action is only one option. Military options are far more varied than the Iranians. And frankly, the Iranian barrage was a demonstration of weakness, not of strength. There's clearly a strong need for Israel to, however it decides to respond, and the response can come in many different ways, not just military. Israel is already fighting Iranian-backed groups in Gaza to the south and Lebanon to the north. A far less powerful opponent delivered a major blow on the 7th of October. Israel's challenge now is how to restore a fear of conflict in its biggest enemy without triggering a war. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, is here. So as we heard, Jeremy, Israel's continuing to insist it will retaliate, even while the US is saying Iran has embarrassed itself. Well, I think they're trying to get the message over to the Israelis that, look, yes, you're right to be concerned. You have been attacked, but this is under control. Look, Iran's embarrassed itself. It's not that simple, though, for the Israelis. I think they feel the need very strongly to send a signal, a really determined signal, that they are not deterred in any sense by Iran. There's something very deep in Israel's DNA that it has to push back. It's not a question of turning the other cheek. It's an eye for an eye, at least. That is something which is really part of their ethos. But the gamble is always, how is the other side going to respond? Because, as you've heard, the Iranians are also saying, hang on, this was self-defense. We were just doing it to make a point, also to restore deterrence. And I think what they were also trying to do was to avoid causing large numbers of civilian casualties, which would have escalated matters. So Israel is having those same similar kinds of discussions about the way that they need to go. The Iranian army chief has said today, in the last few hours, he said something like, our attack on Israel was limited. If Israel retaliates, there will be a far greater response. You know, from Netanyahu's point of view, for many years, he has seen Iran as Israel's number one enemy, bar none. I remember him saying to me in the BBC office in Jerusalem about 2006, When Ahmadinejad was president, he said, look, Ahmadinejad is Hitler and it's 1938. It wasn't an exclusive. He was saying it a lot at the time to people, but that's very much his view. Now, don't forget, there's also the war in Gaza going on. That's something which is still urgent. There's still the famine. There is still military action going on there in the middle part of the Gaza Strip. But as far as Israel's Western allies are concerned, it is less of a priority these last few days than Iran. Iran seems a lot more urgent. Doesn't mean to say that they've forgotten about what's going on there, but instead of talking about differences, potential war crimes, famines, they're talking about unity coalitions facing Iran together.